Hello everyone, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. Wishing you all a delightful listening experience. Today's book under discussion is Lamoremolesto. This is a novel by Italian female author Elena Ferrante. Ferrante is renowned as the author of the Neapolitan Quartet, a narrative about the destinies of two girls from Naples and their lifelong friendship. This work has sold over 10 million copies in more than 40 countries worldwide, topping numerous annual bestseller lists, heralded as one of the most remarkable and distinctive literary phenomena since the turn of the millennium. Consequently, Ferrante was named one of the world's 100 most influential people by Time magazine in 2016. There's very little information available about Ferrante. She has consistently written anonymously and has never made a public appearance. For a long time, readers worldwide didn't even know if she was a male or female author. It was later confirmed through some written interviews and correspondences that she is a woman, born and raised in Naples, Italy, holds a degree in classical literature, is presently a mother, and no longer resides in Naples. Lamoremolesto marks Ferrante's debut literary work, narrating the story of a 45-year-old woman seeking the truth behind her mother's death. Ferrante herself summarized, "This story speaks of a love for a mother, a very secretive, heartfelt love, at the same time, mixed with disgust." Having previously dissected the Neapolitan Quartet, why delve into Lamoremolesto? There are two reasons. Firstly, within this book, you can trace the recurring themes and character relationships that thread through all of Ferrante's works. In other words, much of what's in the Neapolitan Quartet already exists in this book, showcasing the value of this being the author's inaugural work, often revealing the most essential and unique elements of an author in their debut. Secondly, published in 1992, this book is significantly influenced by the feminist movements of the 1970s and 1980s, making it an authentic feminist novel. Feminist novels have been widely discussed in recent years, and this book serves as a gateway into this literary genre. Without further ado, let's proceed with a two-part analysis of this book. The first part will recap the plot and storyline of this novel. The second part will slightly expand upon the story's foundation, delving into the themes of this novel and its distinctive aspects as a feminist work. Part 1, the novel adopts the framework of a detective story, unfolding in the first person. The protagonist, Dahlia, awaits her mother, Amalia, to celebrate her 45th birthday in Rome. 2 days before her birthday, her mother boards a train from Naples to Rome but doesn't arrive. On the eve of her birthday, her mother calls, mentioning a man preventing her from speaking, and abruptly hangs up. Dahlia thinks it's a joke and pays no heed. On her birthday, at 7 a.m., her mother calls again, but after Dahlia queries her whereabouts, her mother unleashes a string of profanity before hanging up. At 10 p.m., her mother calls once more, vaguely mentioning being followed by a man, urging Dahlia to hurry and rescue her. However, when Dahlia asks for her location, her mother changes her tone, suggesting it's better not to come. The next day, her mother's body is found by the seaside, dressed only in undergarments with everything else missing. Strangely, the undergarments are unlike what her mother usually wears, made of delicate lace from a high-end Naples lingerie shop called Vassi Sisters. Amalia's death is a relief for Dahlia. Throughout her life, she never wanted to become like her mother. She vowed never to do what her mother did, wear the clothes her mother wore, or even speak the same language as her mother. Thus, she left Naples, steadfastly avoiding the Neapolitan dialect. Now, after many years, she returns to Naples for her mother's funeral. In a way, this funeral signifies a complete parting of ways between her and her mother. In Dahlia's words from the book, "I know, I am forever losing my mother, and that's what I wanted." However, strange events keep pulling Dahlia back into memories of her mother, entangling her deeper. After her mother's burial, Dahlia returns to her mother's house and discovers the drawers where her mother usually keeps her undergarments are empty, except for a high-quality, new men's shirt. Her mother had a brother named Filippo who often interacted with her, but he was a widower, eccentric, and would never own such an elegant shirt. Later, near the toilet, Dahlia finds a garbage bag containing her mother's worn-out clothes from over a decade ago. It seems her mother was planning to discard everything in her closet. Dahlia despises her mother's clothes, but due to a lack of clean clothes, she reluctantly wears her mother's. After a nap, she receives a call from a man named Castelta, instructing her to fetch her mother's suitcase from the top floor and to hand over the bag of old clothes. Dahlia asks who he is, and he identifies himself as Castelta, a name that triggers familiar yet fearful memories from her childhood. Whenever her mother mentioned this name at home, her father would violently react. Neighbors provide more information. Castelta often visited her mother, bringing flowers and layer cakes, and whenever he came, her mother would laugh loudly. Dahlia retrieves the suitcase, finding items that don't seem characteristic of her mother: pink slippers, a blush-colored lace nightgown, 2 dresses, upscale lingerie also from Vasi Sisters, a toiletry bag containing cosmetics, and a wallet with 220,000 lire, a substantial sum for her mother. Dahlia is intrigued but perplexed by these items. What happened to her mother? Dahlia attempts to find Castelta, inquiring at her uncle Filippo's home for more information. Her uncle mentions that Castelta was childhood friends with Dahlia's father. After World War II, around 1946 or 1947, Castelta proposed a lucrative business to Dahlia's father, painting portraits of loved ones for American soldiers stationed in Italy. This venture lifted them out of poverty swiftly. At that time, Dahlia's mother was only 18, pregnant with Dahlia, managing household chores and sewing to supplement their income. Later, her father wanted to work independently, but her mother disagreed. According to her uncle, that's when her father began abusing her mother. Dahlia recalls her mother being cautious and secretive at home during her childhood, hiding her hats and colorful scarves, fearing her father's suspicions. However, she still interacted with Castelta. Dahlia once told her father she saw her mother kissing Castelta. Her father, along with her uncle, reprimanded Castelta. Later, Castelta sold his shop, left the area with his wife and son. Rumors suggested he dealt in drugs, owned a printing press which burned down in a fire, received a hefty insurance payout, and moved to another city, living well. However, there were whispers about his declining mental state, becoming increasingly eccentric. Dahlia then visits the Vasi Sisters store, inquiring about her mother, but the staff claims not to remember her. Observing the store filled with affluent women, Dahlia tries to imagine her mother's mindset upon entering. Mistaken for a return, she is forcibly ejected by a man named Berendini. Despite showing her mother's ID. Outside, she notices something odd about her mother's ID photo. Someone had erased the bangs on her forehead and the long hair on her cheeks and drawn harsher lines on her face, making it look nothing like her mother but eerily resembling Dahlia. Reluctant to confide in her uncle, fearing his misunderstanding, Dahlia has coffee with him. Suddenly, her uncle rushes to the street. Dahlia follows and finds her uncle chasing Castelta. Amid the chaos, Dahlia loses her uncle but continues following Castelta. As she's about to catch up, another person intervenes, Berendini from the Vasi Sisters store. He stops Dahlia, revealing himself as Castelta's son. Berendini apologizes on behalf of his father, explaining that Castelta's mind deteriorated with age, making him roam and harass people, with no way to control him. He adds that Dahlia's mother was an exceptional woman. Berendini invites Dahlia to dinner, but due to his prior commitments, he directs her to rest in a room upstairs at the restaurant. Entering the room, Dahlia bathes, dons a pink satin nightgown and a blue dress she found in her mother's luggage, fitting her remarkably well. She realizes these items could be her mother's gifts to her for her birthday. As a child, her mother often pretended to forget celebratory occasions, secretly hiding gifts until they were discovered, her joy surpassing that of the recipient. Dahlia reaches into the gown's pocket and finds a birthday card. "Happy birthday, Dahlia, from your mother." In the pocket, she also finds sand, realizing her mother might have worn this nightgown before drowning. Dahlia returns to her mother's house, knocking on the neighbor's door once more. Seeing Dahlia in the dress, the neighbor recalls how happy her mother was, believing these clothes would suit Dahlia perfectly. She mentions that a man brought all these clothes. He proposed an exchange. He wanted these new clothes in return for her mother's patched-up old ones. Advising her mother to be cautious around men, the neighbor mentioned that no matter if they're good or bad, old or young, rich or poor, one should always be vigilant. However, her mother paid no heed and laughed whenever she saw the man. The neighbor also reveals that Dahlia's father once visited her. Over 20 years ago, her mother decided to separate from her father, moving out with her daughters and cutting off contact. However, her father seemed unwilling to let go of control. He visited, assaulted her mother, and instructed the neighbor to inform him if her mother did anything reckless. Her father considered her mother's laughter as recklessness, stating, "My father couldn't stand her laughter. He thought her laughter was insincere, like carefully sprinkled sugar, meant to mock him." 5 days before her mother's death, her father returned, threatening to kill her mother. Despite the neighbor's warning, her mother remained eerily calm and unconcerned. Dahlia recalled her father's every assault on her mother, how her mother remained stone-faced, showing no fear. She suddenly realized her mother might have been a recklessly bold woman all along. She pretended caution under her father's gaze but laughed openly without reservations outside, engaging with men, and in her later years, she played a barter game with a man who appeared so odd and dangerous. Dahlia even thought her mother orchestrated her death, not leaving with resentment but with a certain sense of satisfaction. Dahlia remembered her mother using the sewing machine to make clothes for various women, knowing their sizes well. Dahlia couldn't help but wonder if her mother had been quietly pondering these sizes all these years, considering how to break these dimensions. She never thought about this issue before, and now, she couldn't confirm it with her mother. The story progressed towards its conclusion. After realizing her mother's life was not just about humiliation, that she might have been engaged in some form of resistance, Dahlia felt a newfound strength. She decided to confront the men who had influenced her and her mother's lives. The book described her state of mind at this moment as, "I imagine myself as a figure from Neapolitan cards, the Eight of Swords, a woman armed and ready to quietly step into a dangerous game. I bite my lips until they hurt." Dahlia went to the outskirts and met her father, unseen for years. They immediately confronted each other. Dahlia questioned her father, asking why he came to torment her mother in her twilight years. Her father venomously replied, saying she was enjoying her old age while he rotted in this room. He had followed her mother for a week. During this time, every night, she went out with Castelta, visiting restaurants and cinemas. Her father believed her mother was always flaunting herself. As her father said this, Dahlia noticed a painting of the Vassi sisters store in the room, realizing it was a gift from Castelta. Her father claimed that Castelta came to inform him that nothing happened between him and her mother. Their relationship was one of loyalty and mutual respect. Her father also claimed Castelta never loved her mother, he manipulated her with gifts, putting her in danger. Dahlia confessed completely, she never saw her mother kissing Castelta. She lied to provoke her father, pushing her mother to leave him for good. Finally, Dahlia arrived at the underground location where she imagined her mother and Castelta had their rendezvous. Here, she found a pile of her mother's things, her old clothes, the train ticket from Naples to Rome on May 21, movie tickets, receipts from bars, hotels, and restaurants. Dahlia could only piece together what might have happened in her mother's final days from these clues. She guessed her mother might have arranged to meet Castelta, he suggested company, and they went to various places like a date. Or perhaps they didn't plan it, and Castelta suddenly appeared in her mother's schedule. Maybe he was, as her father said, still tormenting her with sweet words, and her mother played along with his game, concluding it with suicide. Or perhaps everything was her mother's decision, she orchestrated her death and requested Castelta to hand over the suitcase's gifts to her daughter. In short, Dahlia could imagine various versions of the story. Her mother's life depended entirely on how she, as a daughter, interpreted and narrated it. In this underground room, Dahlia also found the blue suit her mother wore when she left Naples. For decades, her mother had been sewing this outfit, trying to make it suitable for all the occasions she deemed important. Dahlia felt this outfit was like a stand-in her mother had crafted for herself, another body for her mother. Dahlia put on this outfit, walked out of the basement, and boarded a train to the seaside where her mother drowned. Sitting on the beach, she took out her ID and began drawing on the photo. She had resisted being like her mother, Amalia, but now, she painted herself to look like her mother. In the end, Dahlia said, "In truth, Amalia was always there. I am Amalia." With that, the novel concluded. You might sense that the plot of the novel isn't overly complex, but it's not an easy read. It demands a lot from the reader, filled with metaphors, symbolism, experimental literary techniques, and a multitude of complex, twisted relationships among the characters. Especially, the mother-daughter relationship between Dahlia and Amalia can be deeply relatable yet challenging to comprehend. What exactly was Ferrante trying to express through this mother-daughter pair? In the following second part, let's delve into the themes and uniqueness of this novel. Speaking of the novel's themes, we need to revisit its background. As mentioned earlier, this novel emerged in the feminist movement of the 1970s and 1980s. Ferrante, to some extent, responded in this book to the clashes and debates of that era's feminist movement. In the early 1970s, a group of American feminists advocated for sisterhood among women, aiming to move away from the world of their mothers. However, Italian feminists held a different view, suggesting that abandoning the identity of motherhood equated to abandoning a unique perspective and spiritual connection inherent in being a woman. In 1975, an Italian feminist and historian, Morano, founded the Milan Women's Bookstore Alliance, encouraging women to seek their spiritual mothers, defending the physiological, historical, and spiritual connections between themselves and their mothers. Ferrante was evidently inspired by Morano. She once stated in an interview, "I wanted to add a perspective to feminism, how to love your mother." The secret of spiritual transmission existing solely between a mother and daughter was consistently a theme in Ferrante's novels. In Troubling Love, Ferrante dedicated extensive prose to depict Dahlia's complex and contradictory attitude toward her mother, Amalia. On one hand, Dahlia seems to have harbored a sense of shame towards her mother from birth. She couldn't bear her mother's actions, her constant yielding to her father, and she was determined not to live like her mother, not to become someone like her. The novel begins by presenting Dahlia at 45, already a standard image of an independent woman. She sports short hair, dresses scarcely, pays little attention to her figure, has her career, and is resistant to establishing intimate relationships with men. From these aspects, it's clear that when Dahlia said she wanted to distance herself from her mother, it wasn't just a declaration, she genuinely dedicated her entire life to this pursuit. On the other hand, as the first female presence in Dahlia's life, her mother constantly, albeit unconsciously, imitated, envied, and worried about her. She always imagined her mother flaunting her glossy black hair, laughing unabashedly outside their home. She always wanted to know where she was, what she was doing, when she'd return, even after reaching 45. Ferrante continuously reveals the multiple facets of this mother-daughter relationship throughout the novel, displaying both tender and murky, dark aspects, rendering the relationship increasingly complex to summarize but unveiling an unimaginable depth. The hidden power within the mother-daughter relationship gradually surfaces in the novel. The mother, in a disclosure influenced by a mixture of dissatisfaction, resentment, worry, and coercion from her daughter, finally decides to leave her abusive husband and start a new life. Following her mother's death, in revisiting her mother's life, the daughter gradually finds the courage to confront a world dominated by danger and men. This vividly displays the immense power within the mother-daughter relationship, powerful enough to lead both women towards wider horizons. Digging deeper, Ferrante delineates how the mother-daughter relationship influences a woman's self-awareness. Initially, Dahlia tries to establish an independent self by detaching from her mother. In the novel, she straightforwardly states, "I want to be myself, to get away from her. Everything needs to be rebuilt." Thus, she makes every effort to erase the traits she associates with her mother, which, to some extent, erases the characteristics of being a woman. However, with age, especially after experiencing her mother's death, she realizes that this self she tried to establish never truly solidified. She must acknowledge, it's naive, it's reckless, to call the act of escaping a woman's body me. Later, as she seeks the truth behind her mother's suicide, through re-encountering her mother, she constructs a new self. The novel reveals that only by understanding her mother's fate can a woman truly comprehend her circumstances, values, and how to break free in a world dominated by men. At the end of the novel, Dahlia, from despising her mother's clothes to donning the outfit her mother meticulously crafted, much like building her own body, arrives at the beach saying, "Actually, Amalia was always there. I am Amalia." At this point, she finally ceases to resist her mother, she accepts becoming her mother. To some extent, she accepts her identity and destiny as a woman, acknowledging she'll spend her life learning to coexist with this identity and fate. In this regard, Ferrante entirely aligns with the feminist movement of the 1970s. Women should establish an identity distinct from men's by defending their mothers. Moreover, it's essential to note that Ferrante establishes a model of female writing through her meticulous portrayal of the mother-daughter relationship. There's much discussion about female writing nowadays. What is female writing? It doesn't merely denote works written by women. A female writer might write following standards set by men. Ferrante herself mentioned that she spent a long time emulating great male writers, narrating stories of weathered, fiercely independent women, essentially, women desiring to live like men. Later, she realized this wasn't acceptable. Therefore, Ferrante emphasizes the need to create a tradition of female writing. She believes female writers should boldly, even rebelliously, shape genuinely female characters and establish literary themes and language unique to women. In an interview with the Paris Review, Ferrante articulated, "As women, we must establish a strong, rich, and broad literary world as extensive as male writers, if not more. Therefore, we must better equip ourselves, we must delve deeply into our differences and use advanced tools for exploration." Taking Troubling Love as an example, Ferrante, in this novel, doesn't employ the rational, restrained language often upheld. Instead, she uses a language verging on chaos. Dahlia's narration begins smoothly, soberly, decently, but as the story progresses, it becomes agitated, filled with unease and anger, seemingly on the verge of collapse. As these two narrative states alternate, you increasingly realize that what's perceived as a dignified language is actually a language oppressed, conforming to others' expectations. In those chaotic words, however, lies the most unique and authentic voice of women. As Ferrante's first book, Troubling Love, compared to her later works, might exhibit some immaturity in both content and technique. It faced criticism from some reviewers. Yet, one thing is certain, Ferrante unearthed the theme of the mother-daughter relationship, further broadening the domain of female writing. Previously, themes like mother-daughter relationships, female friendships, female love, and intergenerational relationships were considered less serious, less profound themes, overlooked in the literary world. However, Ferrante's works demonstrate that within these themes, complexities of human nature, tumultuous histories, eternal destinies can be depicted, particularly showcasing a voice exclusively female. Therefore, without a doubt, these themes should also be essential within the literary world, worth resolutely writing about. Thus, this book has been deciphered for you, and let's recap. Lamoremolesto is the debut literary work of the Italian author Ferrante. In the first part, we revisited the storyline of this novel, briefly, a tale of searching for a mother. It's akin to a detective novel, narrating how Dahlia's mother was found drowned at the seashore, prompting Dahlia to embark on a journey to unveil the truth behind her mother's death. In this process, she's compelled to reevaluate and discover her mother while simultaneously discovering herself. In the second part, we discussed the novel's themes. This book responds to the feminist movement of the 1970s and 1980s, attempting to reveal a mother-daughter relationship far more secretive, complex, but also deeply touching and expansive than imagined. It highlights how such a relationship profoundly influences women's self-awareness, leading them to establish an identity entirely distinct from men. Simultaneously, the novel establishes a paradigm of female writing. Ferrante, as a female writer, persists in discovering aspects unique to women, distinct from male literature. She consistently writes about themes disregarded or trivialized by men, such as mother-daughter relationships, female friendships, intimate relationships, and intergenerational relationships, proving these themes to be important within the literary realm. Well, that concludes the introduction to this book for you. Congratulations on another book listened to. Thank you all for your support and attention. Subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom and practice to achieve our financial goals and create a better future together. Thank you, goodbye.